My husband's best friend officiated our wedding. Now, I suspect she secretly had 4 children with him, and one of them just tried to hook up with my child. This started out as a disturbing, intrusive thought that I couldn't shake. Over the years, it's grown into something toxic, something that weighs on my mind constantly. I'm 42. My husband, Luke, is 43, and so is Amy. I met Luke in college, but he and Amy had been friends since they were around 7. They were inseparable, understood each other easily, and always said they were like siblings. Naturally, when I started dating Luke, I felt a little uneasy about how close he was with her. But they both reassured me. They insisted their friendship was never romantic or physical. Amy was just like the sister Luke never had. I believed them, and it didn't take long before I stopped feeling insecure about Amy. Eventually, she became a friend to me, too. She even officiated our wedding. Luke and I went on to build a great life together, and our relationship always felt solid. After we got married and moved in, we still saw Amy often, and that didn't bother me. I even spent time helping her meet men, since she often talked about how unlucky she was in love. Around the same time Luke and I started having children, Amy began having kids, too. To give you some background, our kids are Sophie, 15, Owen, 12, Louise, 10, and Carter, 6. Amy's kids are Tom, 17, Kay, 14, and twins Adam and Jenna, 9. Amy wasn't in a relationship when she had her kids. She wasn't married either. As far as I knew, she was dating on and off. Whenever she got pregnant, we never heard much about the father. I just assumed she was having casual encounters and didn't stay in touch with the men. Luke thought the same. I did ask her about the fathers each time, and she always said she didn't know. She never seemed overly concerned about raising kids alone, and since she had support from us, I didn't push the topic. Amy never asked for help, but of course, Luke wouldn't let her struggle, especially with kids to care for. We've been lucky financially. I have a good job, and Luke's parents, who already knew and liked Amy, were happy to help her. My in-laws are generous, kind people, so we helped her get a place to stay with her children. Some might call her a freeloader, but I never saw it that way. She needed help, and we were in a position to offer it. People may also question why she didn't use birth control more reliably. That's a longer story, and honestly, I never fully understood it myself. It wasn't a religious belief, but for some reason, Amy felt very strongly about not using birth control. She explained it to me several times, but her reasons never totally made sense to me. Since Amy and Luke had been close for decades, it wasn't unusual for them to hang out without me. That seemed fine. I also spent time with Amy one-on-one, though Luke did so more often. She was his friend first. Sometimes this meant Luke would go to her place, and occasionally stay overnight. Maybe I was naive to trust that nothing was happening, but they always acted like lifelong buddies. I never saw anything strange between them. Our kids grew up together. Not in the same house, ours isn't that big, but they were raised closely and developed strong friendships, which made sense, especially if I'm right and they share the same father. I've been avoiding this point, but yes, I now suspect that Luke fathered at least one of Amy's kids. Possibly all of them. I never thought my husband was capable of cheating, and he's never shown signs of being unfaithful. But he does spend a lot of time with Amy. And honestly, I can't recall her having any real boyfriends over the years. She chatted with men at bars, and I even tried to help her meet someone, but it never led to anything. So, when she got pregnant the first time, I was curious. When it happened again, and again, I wondered if she had a secret partner she didn't want to tell us about. But I couldn't think of any reason she'd keep the father hidden, even from her kids. After our youngest, Carter, was born, Luke and I agreed he should get a vasectomy. Amy's twins were born a couple of years before that. After the procedure, Luke and I still had a healthy intimate life, but I no longer had to worry about pregnancy. Interestingly, Amy stopped having children after the twins too. Maybe it's coincidence. But after Luke's vasectomy, neither of us had more kids. That didn't stop Luke from visiting her and spending time with her children. He seemed genuinely invested in their lives. He's always acted like a father to Amy's kids, especially as they've grown older. He's the father figure they never had. And while that could be seen as a generous thing, in context, it makes me uneasy, especially when combined with other things I've noticed. Physically, Amy's kids resemble Luke. I won't go into details like hair color or facial features, because I want to keep things vague for privacy's sake. But they definitely look like they could be his. Kay has a rare allergy that Luke also has. The twins, especially Adam, strongly resemble Luke. And the older Tom gets, the more he reminds me of Luke, both in appearance and personality. Amy and Luke are of different races, and Amy's children look biracial, something that matches Luke's race. Of course, that doesn't prove anything, but it adds to the suspicion. I've never brought this up to Luke or Amy. I don't want to be the one to create conflict. And whether I'm right or wrong, I know they would both deny it and be hurt by the accusation. I also don't want our kids, or Amy's, to hear anything about this. Luke still spends time with Amy and her children, and they're often around mine too. I've hinted that I want more attention from him and wish he'd spend less time with her, but either he didn't pick up on it or chose not to. I haven't accused him of favoring her, because that wouldn't be fair. He hasn't neglected me. Still, I can't shake the feeling that Luke and Amy have been intimate, likely more than once. From what I remember, Amy never really planned to be a mother. She wasn't against it, and once her children were born, she loved them. But parenting wasn't something she talked about when planning her future. She occasionally mentioned a husband and kids, but it never seemed to be a serious goal. So, I don't think Amy had children with Luke out of a desire to be a mom. If there was an affair, that likely wasn't the reason. It would have just been a result. I've tried to ignore this for years. I first got suspicious after Kay's allergy appeared, but I brushed it off. Then came the twins. I brushed that off, too. When Amy stopped having children, I wanted that to reassure me, but Luke had gotten a vasectomy. If anything, that made my concerns grow. Sometimes I wish Amy's twins had been born after the procedure. That might have helped me feel more certain. Instead, I'm left with doubts that have only deepened. But I don't want to be the one who tears our family apart, especially since I still don't know the full truth. Serious conversation. Just the three of us, and I laid it all out. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I simply told them everything I've been carrying for years. I told them I suspected Luke was the father of Amy's children. I explained how the timing of their pregnancies, the resemblance, the allergy, the fact that Amy never had real relationships, Luke's vasectomy timing, and the absence of any known fathers all pointed to something they had always denied. I told them how the situation with Tom and Sophie had pushed me past the point of silence. How terrified I was that something irreversible might happen between them, and how unbearable it was to not know the truth. They were both stunned. Amy broke down crying. Luke looked like he had been punched in the gut. They swore, nothing had ever happened between them. Luke told me he had never slept with Amy. He looked me in the eye and said if I wanted to DNA test every single one of Amy's kids, he'd consent. Amy said she understood why I had these thoughts, that she should have shared more about her life, but that she was never trying to deceive anyone, that she truly didn't know who the fathers were, and she hated herself for how messy it all became. But here's the kicker. Amy admitted something that stunned both Luke and me. She confessed that when she was younger, early 20s, she had been in love with Luke. She never told him. She never acted on it. And when he started dating me, she let that go. Or at least tried. She said she accepted that it would never happen and focused on being his friend. She then admitted that some of her choices with men were chaotic, in part because she was working through that loss in her own dysfunctional way. She denied Luke ever being involved in any of her pregnancies, but she admitted she kept some paternity details to herself because she didn't want to face judgment. That she had multiple casual relationships, some overlapping, and didn't feel confident enough in any of the men to name one as a father. She also said she thought that naming one might cut off Luke and me from helping her, not financially, but emotionally, and that terrified her. It was a hard conversation. Luke looked shocked and devastated. He held my hand the entire time and kept saying, "I never touched her. Not once. I swear to you." Do I believe them? Mostly. I believe Amy was in love with Luke. I believe she made some chaotic choices. I believe she leaned too hard on Luke emotionally. I believe he was too involved in her life in ways that crossed boundaries, even if he didn't cheat. And I believe that if there's been any intimacy, it may have happened a long time ago and been buried so deeply neither of them ever wanted to dig it back up. But I also know what I've seen with my own eyes. And I still don't have hard proof to fully silence my doubt. As for Tom and Sophie, I laid down the law. I told Sophie very gently that I believe there's a real chance she and Tom might be biologically related. She was horrified. Not angry, just horrified. She promised she wouldn't pursue anything with him until we could be sure. I asked her to trust me and be careful. And she agreed. Luke said he'll do a paternity test, so long as Amy and the kids consent. He wants me to feel safe. We haven't approached the kids yet. We're working with a family therapist to figure out how and when to have that conversation, or whether it's better left alone unless a medical reason arises. This isn't a happy ending. Not yet. But it's movement. And for the first time in years, the secret is no longer mine alone to carry. Do you think I should still push for the DNA tests now? Or let sleeping dogs lie? Amy had a relationship that went beyond friendship, though, like me, she never had proof. Kat even said she confronted Luke once, years ago, and he adamantly denied it. But still, she'd noticed things. The way they talked to each other, the amount of time they spent alone, the strange closeness that didn't quite match a typical brother-sister dynamic. Jim, on the other hand, was more skeptical. He didn't want to believe it and still thinks it's unlikely, but he also admitted that if it were true, Luke would never confess to it. That crushed me to hear, because it confirmed my biggest fear, that I may never really know. Kat was gentle but honest with me. She said she didn't blame me for being suspicious, especially with Tom showing so much interest in Sophie. She also said that if there's any chance Luke is Tom's father, Sophie and Tom have to be kept apart. That was the first time anyone besides me had said those words out loud. It felt both validating and terrifying. I cried. Hard. Not just from the stress but from the exhaustion of carrying this weight for so long. Jim comforted me. Kat held my hand. And while they didn't have any answers, they gave me something else I've been desperate for: support. Luke and I have returned home since that visit. Sophie is back to spending time with Tom, though I think she knows something is up now. She's not as bubbly as she usually is, and she's been asking if something's wrong between me and Amy. I've told her nothing, just that we've had a disagreement. But I can tell she feels the tension. As for Tom, I think Luke really did talk to him. He seems more cautious around Sophie now. Still flirtatious, still clearly crushing on her, but not as hands-on as before. Whether that lasts is another story. Here's the truth. I'm still torn. I still don't know if Luke cheated. I still don't know who fathered Amy's children. I still don't know if Sophie is safe emotionally and physically from a relationship that could destroy her if the worst is true. And I still don't know what I'm going to do. But for now, I'm watching everything closely. I'm talking to my lawyer about what rights, if any, I'd have to pursue testing if this ever becomes unavoidable. I've made it very clear to Luke that Tom and Sophie must not date, and he's agreed. But until I know the truth, I feel like I'm living in limbo. Waiting, hoping that the situation will resolve itself, but terrified that it won't. And that, one day, I'll be forced to choose between keeping a horrible secret, or blowing up my entire world. Would you like me to help condense this into a shorter summary or script for storytelling? Serious talk. I suspect my husband fathered my best friend's kids. It felt pointless to confront just one of them. I knew if I went to Luke or Amy alone, the other would hear about it before I could explain everything myself. I needed them both to hear it, together. Once the kids were off to school, I laid it all out. My suspicions, my reasoning, my heart. I told them how much I love both of them. But there were too many signs to ignore. Amy's kids look a lot like Luke. And I didn't even mention everything in the original post. For instance, Luke sleepwalks. So do 3 of Amy's kids. I tried to keep it together. I said how much they meant to me and how I didn't want to believe any of this. But the thought had been building. Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other pushed it over the edge. I had to ask, had Luke and Amy ever crossed the line? Had Luke been unfaithful? Was there any chance that her kids were actually his? They reacted exactly how you'd expect. Their responses were perfect, too perfect. Like they'd practiced. Amy was furious and offended. Luke just looked heartbroken. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was gaslighting. I couldn't tell. They had explanations for everything. Hair color similarities? Common traits. Me being okay with them spending time together in the past? Why the sudden change now? Amy said I was acting like Luke being a father figure to her kids was a problem, when I'd praised him for it before. Luke was gentler. He said he understood how I felt, even if it hurt him. Amy, on the other hand, looked at me like I'd betrayed her. I ended up apologizing, multiple times. Even though deep down, I didn't feel like I was wrong. When I asked Amy who the father of her children really was, she snapped, said it was none of my business. And I get it, but after everything we'd done for her family, I felt like I deserved the truth. I regret saying that out loud, but it was already too late. Amy screamed that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who had supported her all along. That I'd always acted superior. I didn't think I had, but maybe I gave off that vibe unintentionally. Luke tried to calm her down, but the tension was thick. So I asked Luke, just for my own peace of mind, if he'd take a DNA test. I needed to know, not because I didn't love him, but because I needed the truth. He agreed, reluctantly, but Amy flat out refused. She cursed me out and told me to back off. Luke tried to talk her into it but gave up. He said he couldn't force her. And legally, he's right. I asked my lawyer. The only way to demand a paternity test would be for Luke to claim he believes he's the father, which he won't do. He insists nothing ever happened. Without that, there's no legal way forward. I even asked Luke if he'd consider secretly taking Tom's DNA. He said no, it felt unethical. He reminded me that if Amy ever found out, our friendship with her would be over for good. Then Luke went to stay the night with Amy. I know, I was furious too. He swore it was just to calm things down. I didn't sleep a wink. But when he came back the next morning, we had a long talk and decided to visit his parents with our kids to get away from the drama. That's when things got even more interesting. I opened up to Luke's mom, Kat. And guess what? She's also suspected that Amy's kids might be Luke's. She never said anything because she had no proof. Luke's dad, Jim, refuses to believe it. Says Luke and Amy are like siblings. But Kat's not buying it, says they're not actually related, and nothing would have stopped them if they were attracted to each other. Hearing that from her made me feel a little less crazy. Later, I realized Sophie needed to hear the truth. So I kept her home from school and told her everything, about my suspicions, about Tom and the DNA. She listened quietly, then told me we needed to talk to Tom too. So we did. And that's when they shocked me. They already knew. Tom had overheard things. Noises from Amy's room, weird conversations. He suspected Amy and Luke were sleeping together. He told Sophie back in January, and she agreed something was off. They even suspected Luke might be the father of Amy's kids, including Tom. But here's the relief. They were never romantically involved. They pretended to be closer than they really were to see if anything suspicious happened. Sophie just didn't want to tell me because she thought it would destroy me. We cried. I reassured them. I told them how much I loved them. Tom said he'd willingly take a DNA test. And they both agreed. Don't tell Amy or Luke. Just do it. And now, that's the plan. Tom's even trying to set up a camera in Amy's room. And Sophie told me outright, you need to divorce Dad. Hearing that from my own daughter hit hard, but she's right. So that's where I am now. A total mess, but finally feeling seen. Sophie and Tom are on my side. I finally know I'm not crazy. Thanks for sticking through this wild story. If you love Reddit-style family drama, subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next.